See a thing. It's not doing anything. Am I live? Hi, everybody. I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for me.
You need to stop looking at you. You're delayed.
I will look at my puppy then. Hi, everybody. How's everybody tonight? We're just getting ready. Ignore the spot on my shirt where we were just getting ready. I took a drink and went bloop. So we're not worried about that today. There we go. Bruno is not. I don't know what Bruno thinks of this right now because he's like climbing on me, going like, "What are you doing?"
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody. Lisa's in the peanut gallery doing the things. She's doing all the thinking stuff, so I don't have to. So who else here? See, I don't know how to check that.
You have to look at the chat.
Oh, you're in fine form. No, I think there's a button where you can like actually look at the list. Erica's here, and Toadstool Tarot is here. Bruno is here. Hi, what are you doing, buddy? Tarot Magician, Michelle Cracker. Yeah, Michelle. Sorry, I almost thought I read that wrong. Victor Gulsvig is here. Tarot Cat Moon is here.
That's
Lisa
Victoria,
is here.
Babe.
I'm sorry, what?
You said Victor. That's Victoria.
Victoria? Oh my God, Victoria, I'm so sorry. Apparently I need new glasses. This is going to be a horrible, horrible chat if I can't even read people's names correctly. Anyway, so how's everybody's week been? Everybody having a good time, good week? Christmas is coming up. It's like crazy stuff. I gotta keep looking at my wife for some reason. I got a little camera to look at, or I can look over there and like just torment the crap out of her. So yeah. How was your week, honey?
My week was good, except for I had the flu all week.
She had coughing and the plague. Yeah, so we spent the week looking up stuff on Edgar Cayce, so that was fun. Reminding myself of all the things. Did anybody else look him up? Get a chance to see? Is my chat locked up, or is just everybody quiet, waiting to see if I'm going to say something silly?
I don't think it's locked up. It's good.
The last comment I see is yours, saying hi, everyone.
Then something's not right.
My chat is locked up. How do you refresh from here?
Hand me your tablet.
Hand hit the tablet.
Just go out of it and go back into it.
Okay, I know how to do that.
Oh my God, Tarot Cat, I'm sorry. I hope he's okay. Tarot Cat's dad had a heart attack and is recovering from bypass.
Oh my God, I hope he's okay.
Hi, everybody just joining.
Okay, so apparently I'm not in the chat, but I'm in the live.
Turn your tablet the other way, babe.
There it is. I'm here now, guys. Yeah, I'm not going, how's everybody going? Oh, it's pretty quiet in here. Yeah, Molly's in, Jen's in, a bunch of people are in. Sorry, guys. For some reason, my chat was locked up, and I thought it was just people getting settled in and not chatting yet. Anyway. Oh, Molly says, hi, Liggy. Yeah, sorry, Tarot Cat.
Happy birthday.
Oh, yes, my birthday was yesterday. For anybody who gives a damn or does. I don't give a damn, so it starts that. I'm officially old. I'm 55, which makes me officially a senior. For some, depending on where I go and what kind of a discount I want. And you know what else I found out yesterday? That my birthday, December 14th, is the same birthday as Nostradamus.
Which was
like,
a super cool thing.
That was really cool.
You know how we figured that out? I was looking at the Sasha Graham's 365 Tarot Spreads book.
Yeah, we were looking at a Tarot Spreads book, and it was just kind of there, and we're like, and we looked it up, and it's like, it's true.
Except Nostradamus was born many years earlier.
Oh, wait, Toadstool Tarot says, yeah, I'm only 55. So we looked up, we picked Edgar Cayce as the topic this week. So what did we find out about him so far? Okay, he was born in 1877. I did a 5 facts video, if anybody hasn't seen it. It's only a couple minutes long, so I did that just to kind of tempt people with some information. Oh, Cushing's disease for your dog. That's what we thought our dog had at first when it was actually finding out he was a diabetic was actually like a relief considering what it initially looked like. Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear about that. This is like this is like, oh, Merry Christmas, everybody.
There's a lot. It's just a tough
I'm sorry.
one
Now
to
I'm trying to be. Now I'm being facetious. Anyway, so Edgar Cayce was born in 1877. So we're talking about somebody whose life was a very long time ago. He died in 1945, and he was an American psychic. He would put himself into a trance, and while he was in his trance, he started us off mostly for medical diagnosis. Somebody, the official version is that, okay, back in his day, hypnosis was one thing that people would do to try to treat people with various ailments and whatever. And he developed a severe case of laryngitis, like the kind that just simply did not go away. And in the story goes that in searching for a cure, somebody suggested that he let himself be hypnotized and see if the hypnosis could uncover something. And it was something that people did back then. It wasn't necessarily considered, it was considered a new science, and people were willing to give it a try if they had something going on that they couldn't figure out. And he tried it, and he cured himself. And during the course of these, he cured himself because he identified that it was basically a stress-related thing. Where are you going?
That was accident.
Oh, sorry, I saw a flash. So that's where his whole thing started with. So the hypnosis thing was something that happened because of other things. There's also the official story being that when he was younger, he would regularly have conversations when he was a kid, have conversations with his deceased grandfather, saw angels, saw other spirits, saw auras, things like that. And there's not, I mean, the commentary is there, but not a lot of detail about what that was or wasn't like for him, because it was 1877. Documentation, nobody would take a video of that, right? It just, so there's no, it's all hearsay after the fact. But so Edgar Cayce experienced hypnotism because he had a medical condition he was trying to sort out. And in the course of doing that, found out that he could diagnose other people through accessing what he called the universal consciousness. So that's kind of what begins his career. But what's really interesting about Edgar Cayce, what I thought was really cool about him, was that, thanks, Erica, Edgar Cayce is a little bit older than me. Fun fact, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But just a little.
Just. I have to smack you both. Anyway, okay. So the story as that happens is that through this, he discovered that he had a gift. And then through like, hey, this stuff that happened while you were under was weird. Let's look into this. Discovered that he could lay down and put himself into a trance without the need to be hypnotized, and then go into this state, and people could ask him questions and he would answer the questions. And because he was a devout Christian, which we'll touch on later, there's two reasons why I think there's something to this guy. And the fact that he was a devout Christian is one of those reasons. So he started off for doing a lot of diagnosing people's illnesses and various problems. Sometimes he really struggled with a lot of the stuff that he did. So sometimes he was skeptical of even his own readings because of his religious beliefs. So as time goes on, his readings are getting more and more accurate. His cures are getting more and more precise. His success rate, he had a really good success rate when people followed the instructions to the letter. When people weren't following the instructions, it was just luck of the draw sometimes. So there was that. So yeah. Okay, so Toadstool Tarot says, was he channeling other figures or just accessing information? According to Edgar Cayce, he was doing both. Because for some of his medical diagnosis, apparently he would take on a German accent and said that he was channeling was channeling some doctor that some not famous doctor, but some doctor who had previously died. Someone like an American German, so an American but with a German accent. And I'm not sure if anything was ever found about that. Yeah. So that's kind of the basis of it. So he started off doing health-based readings. And don't forget, this is at a time when polio was still a thing, tuberculosis was still a thing. People routinely died of simple ailments like pneumonia, which I know pneumonia is serious, but for most people, unless you contract particularly vicious forms of pneumonia, you're not going to have a good time, but you're going to go to the. Oh, sorry, something just started flashing.
It's just a random quote.
Okay, so people when people got sick in 1901, they would grasp at any potential for a cure or an alternative or something that. So yeah, but he was curing. He was providing not prescriptions, but eat these foods, do these exercises, take these compounds in this order, and people were recovering from tuberculosis that the doctors had given up on. So yeah, so that's part of it. So that's kind of in a nutshell where he got started. But then what happened is he's doing some readings, and there's a long history of people trying to talk him into going into business, people trying to talk him into expanding on this. There's a long history of various things that were coming down, that this experiences as things were going along. But at some point, somebody who had their own beliefs about mystical things and whatever, I'll just say whatever because you guys know me. I'm not trying to dismiss anything. Anyway, so basically somebody comes along and says, well, if you're accessing a universal conscious, maybe that universal conscious knows about things like Akashic records, Atlantis, spirituality, reincarnation. And so he agrees to take a few questions. And at the same time, because this isn't necessarily, this is something I read in one of his books a long time ago, is that what was already happening was that he would do a reading and say, oh, I have the, one of the things that he always said was, I have the body. So somebody would say, oh, so-and-so is sick with tuberculosis. What can we do to make them better? Blah, blah, blah. He would do a reading and say, oh, we have the body. And he would say something like, oh, this was somebody that I encountered before in a past life. Because, this is like, word of mouth gets out. So basically it's friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. So basically he's like, yeah, so a friend of a friend sends a letter. He goes, oh yeah, well, we have the body of this, this guy's son's sick. Oh, we have the body. I knew this guy back in Egypt. So he was saying stuff like this during his readings. It was getting really, really, really this. So when stuff like that leaked out, that's when people started showing up going, I have these mystical questions. I have questions about all these things. So then he started doing these readings, 14,000 of them. Readings about all this stuff. And so yeah, dreams are today's answers to tomorrow's questions. So why do I think there's something? Let's get the one thing that matters about this entire discussion is, why do I think there's something significant with Edgar Cayce? Because there have been mystics throughout the years who have admitted flat out years later, oh yeah, this was entirely a hoax because I needed the money. This was this was just well, I believe in mysticism and this paid the bills. And a lot of the hoaxes were driven by people wanting money. The two things that make me think there's something significant with Edgar Cayce is that for the vast majority of his career doing this, he refused to accept money. He refused to let people pay him. He lived in poverty. He went bankrupt. He supported himself day to day as a photographer. So people would come in and say, well, we want you to do this and we want you to do that. So at one point, a friend who wanted to work with him doing the readings, helped him build a photography studio so that he could earn his own money. But he never took money directly from any of this. He only finally started taking money directly in the 1940s during World War II, for the simple fact that during the war, he was doing 8 to 10 readings a day. Everybody was writing him letters because, oh, is my loved one okay? They're on the front lines. Are they okay? My son, father, brother is missing in action. Where are they? Are they okay? So he was doing 8 to 10 readings a day, and the only way to keep up with the number of demands for readings was to start accepting donations. And he never once charged anybody. It was like, if you want to send a donation, I'll accept it, but that's it. That's number one. So, oh my God, a Hollywood movie? Yeah, that would be like absolutely fun. But that's the really interesting thing, because like he was working with one person who would facilitate this because he never remembered what happened afterwards. So if somebody wasn't there taking notes, and he was working with one person, apparently early on, his wife was the one taking all the notes. He was working with one person who was asking him for winning horse races and stuff like that, and then using the information to make bets. As soon as Cayce found out that happened, he fired the guy. He was done. He walked away. He would not, under any circumstance. So every single other one of these fake mediums that has been exposed over the years, money was their motivating factor, and money was the one thing that Edgar Cayce consistently refused to accept. That's number one. That's one of the reasons why I think there's something to this guy. The other one is because he was devoutly Christian. So he's a devout Christian. He read the Bible, and this isn't in the fun facts. He read the Bible once for every year of his life. He led Sunday school classes. He was a regular churchgoer. He was deeply involved in the church, missionary. He considered the health readings. Yeah, that's a photo. That's a staged photo, but it's based on descriptions of what his study looked like. So he,
Christian.
Yeah, I'm trying to explain it. I'm trying to think of the right way to say this, but basically, a lot of the stuff that was outlined in his readings was stuff that he didn't believe in, that he struggled with, like the idea of reincarnation. He struggled with that. This came up regularly in his readings for a really long time. The only reason, like, he found verses in the Bible that supported the possibility, and then he was okay. But the idea that concepts from other religions could be more have more value and be more important than Christianity, he struggled with that. Things like Atlantis and stuff like that wasn't quite such a struggle because that was simple archaeology. But the other part of it, like in his readings about Atlantis, one of the things that he said was that Atlantis was a vastly superior civilization. He struggled with that. So a lot of the mediums, and again, a lot of the fakes, very much would always say the right thing and stand behind their readings. And he didn't. He said, I stand behind the medical readings because he's got the proof of it, he's got the documentation, but this other stuff that can't be proven troubled him constantly. And healing of the psychic without the change of the mental, healing of the physical without the change of the mental and spiritual aspects brings little real help to the individual in the end. How true, because the mind and the body imprint and imitate each other. What we think, we become. What we become, we think. It's an insidious process that can predispose us to illness or it can lead us to health. And these are not necessarily Christian ideals as they were understood in his time. You got to think, he passed away in 1945. So it's pretty easy for anybody now to extrapolate what the religious beliefs in 1945 would have been. And that was at the time of his death. After 40 years of doing this, he was born in 1877 when a lot of religious beliefs were even more restrictive. Is that the best word? So anyway, that's why I think there's something to him. Okay, right there. That's why I think there's something to him. So what did he do readings on? Is everybody up to speed so far? Does this make sense? Does anybody have? If anybody has a question, just do it in all caps so that neither one of us miss it, or direct it to Lisa. Would it be easier to direct it to you or to me?
All caps is the easiest.
Yeah. Have you guys seen David Whitlock? He looks a lot like Edgar Cayce. Some think David is a reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. David is one of the guys from Ancient Aliens. Oh, that's interesting. That's somebody to look at. Is that the photo?
Edgar Cayce versus David
Whitlock. Oh, I'm sorry, Wilcock. I don't know how I'm going to actually get through this if I can't even read a basic word. You know what? I saw this photo and I was just scrolling by and I just kept going. That's interesting. Wow, they do look a lot alike.
There we go.
I don't think they look super alike, but I think they look, you can definitely think that they would be related.
I just took it off, but yeah.
Oh, Eric would like to know where to get the quotes. Did he ever get crap from the church for blasphemy regarding his prophecies? I'm not sure. I do know that, well, actually he did. There's not a lot of documentation on that because by the time we get to the point where he's hired a secretary, and they have 14,000 recorded readings on file, but before that he had done at least 8,000 readings. But we do know that his wife was uncertain about the health readings and very uncomfortable with the rest of it. We know from his self-reporting that he was very uncomfortable with it. And I would guess that his church would probably have also, there was probably a lot of discussion about all of that as a thing. A certain degree of spirituality was somewhat accepted at the time in terms of, like providing medical diagnosis and healing people being a gift from God. So that would have probably had a degree of support. But when he started talking about reincarnation and Atlantis and past lives, and because he not only talked about Atlantis, but he talked about ancient Egypt as being on par with Atlantis in a lot of ways. So like he talked about how the pyramid, and I should have looked this up. I should have did a bullet list and looked it up. But one of the things that he talked about was like the pyramids were never a tomb, that they were basically a power plant, and that it was by trying to produce energy that the pyramids and the early Egyptian society collapsed, because they had like the equivalent of a Chernobyl incident or something. That implies radioactivity, which I'm not saying. His readings weren't that specific. He passed away in 1945, so a lot of terminologies that he would have used would have had a completely different meaning. But yeah. Oh, Amethyst Ascension is in. Anybody new? Oh, I'm sorry. I made it very clear that I am just being a total derp and I can't even read basic words today, so people can come and go, and I'm just gonna like whatever. Yeah. So I think there was issues with the church. I'm not sure what. By the time he moved to Virginia Beach, because he had in a dream, he had dreams. He also had prophetic dreams. So he would have a dream and be visited by angels in his dreams that would tell him, do this, do that, do this, do that. And he went and moved to Virginia Beach because of a dream that was brought to him by angels. And he eventually actually opened up a hospital, so that his cures could be documented, so that the treatments could be supervised and the results documented, because he was deeply interested in the medical aspect of what he was doing and putting together comprehensive cures that could work on large numbers of people. Yeah, thanks. See, Amethyst Ascension is okay with me being a derp today.
I'm okay with it. It's entertaining.
Yeah. Dreams are today's answers to tomorrow's questions. He definitely had a lot of that going on, but that was more of dreams were telling him what he should do, not in terms of his readings. So yeah. So am I missing anything? So yeah, there's not a lot of documentations about the church, because he was already having enough personal crisis with it, but it took him a lot. Yes, it says that he would first go into a trance state, and it did take a lot of his energy. Basically, he did a reading on himself in 1945, near the end of World War II. He was doing 8 to 10 readings a day, and he finally collapsed of physical exhaustion. But it's documented in the files that before that, a few weeks prior to that, in one of his readings, because he would be doing a reading and then just all of a sudden would just break out into something else and go on about something. Some of his past life readings were like that. He would do a reading on somebody and say, "Oh yeah, blah 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 blah. In a past life, this was what this person was all about." He's got a lot of documentation on past lives reading, because he claimed to be looking at what was called the Akashic record. Well, he claimed to be looking at the Akashic record, and I think anybody who's watching who has a connection to the tarot community is probably aware of what that means. Anybody who's not, anybody who happens to be who's not necessarily connected with the tarot community, the Akashic records are a spiritual record of everything about the past, present, and future of all of your individual series of lives that you can and will be living. And he claimed to have access to that. So and that was where he would get the diagnosis. That was where he would get the cures. That was where he'd get information when people were asking spiritual questions, or I guess by today's terminologies, we'd be saying mental health questions. He would go look at the Akashic records. If somebody said, "I have an unreasonable, unfounded fear of dogs," he'd go look at the Akashic records and say, "Yeah, well, in 2 of your past lives, you died after getting a dog bite, because you developed gangrene. So that would make sense. You've got a strong, and this is the kind of stuff he would do." So yeah, a lot of this stuff was, so in his trance state, he's accessing the Akashic records. So anyway, he's doing a reading. Let's just ride the train and see how many twists and turns it can take. So back to trance state. So basically, in the trance state, he's essentially, I would personally think of it, I don't know, I can't remember what he called it. I would personally think of it as a form of astral travel to the Akashic, to the person themselves, to take a physical look to the Akashic records. And so that physical exhaustion of doing these readings was actually what is actually stated to be what is a contributing factor to his death. He was doing so many of them. All of a sudden, he's in the middle of a reading the one day, and I forget what the context was. Basically, the reading devolves to the side, and basically, it's like, yeah, if you don't take a, you're doing too much of this. If you don't take a break from this, you're going to die. You're going to collapse. You're going to die. It's World War II. Everybody wants, everybody wants to know about their loved ones. Everybody wants to, there's just a lot of need. He's doing 8 to 10 readings a day. And yeah, so he collapsed. He collapsed. Did another reading and said, yeah, this is go. So he basically then he diagnosed himself. Well, you were told what was going to happen. This is what happened. Go rest, and you will either survive this or you will not. And it's just simply in the hands of fate now. Nothing you can do. And he had a stroke a few weeks after that, and then died. They said he had a stroke a few weeks later, and then died about 3 months after that. So I'm not sure what the. Don't forget, this was record keeping from 1945, and a lot of terminologies might not make a lot of. They might not apply the same way. It sounds like he was kind of bedridden / coma type thing and just drifted and just passed away. So that's how he died. Yeah, prophetic dreams. You know what? I've had them too. I've had dreams that have come true. I've had dreams that have come true. That's actually a topic that he addressed. How to recognize when a dream has meaning and things like that. And I think there's a book. There's like literally like I don't know how many dozens and dozens of books that were written about him, because there's like Edgar Cayce on Atlantis, Edgar Cayce on reincarnation. So there's a bunch of books that were written while he was still alive. Some of them he wrote, some of them biographers wrote. There was a bunch of books that were released after his death, and there are still new books coming out because and here's the fun part. And again, this was in the 5 fun facts that it is called the Association for Research and Enlightenment, and it is the association that he founded in 1932 when he moved to Virginia Beach. That was why he moved to Virginia Beach, so that this could be documented and studied. And again, there was some sort of an exchange at that point, but he wasn't being paid. He still wasn't being paid for his readings at that point. I think because they were operating the hospital, I forget just how that went, because I remember reading it in the books, but in some of I had over the years, I've probably read over a dozen books, a couple that were written by his son, a couple that were written by biographers, a couple that are compilations on particular topics that are then, so, I go in, I study a particular topic that he's done readings on, then I write a book about it. So there's dozens of those, dozens and dozens of those. So what all? Uh-oh, I think I'm stuck again. Am I not seeing chat again? The last comment I see is from Erica saying that quote sums up a huge part of my spiritual path.
Yeah, I think that's current. Yeah, that's current.
Okay. Sorry, guys. I'm on my tablet, and sometimes I don't trust it. The same tablet that I had to... I got it plugged in this time, though, so we're not going to be embarrassing my wife this week.
Yay.
At least not for that reason. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know you guys are here. I thought my chat locked up a little while ago, and I was just wondering if it was doing that again. Yeah, dozens of books. What I find really interesting, and it's a catch-22, because our modern approach to religion in general is much different than in Cayce's time. It's much different in like the 60s and 70s when a lot of the books about him were written. But if you are comfortable with religious context being applied to some of the more spiritual messages, a lot of the more interesting stuff and the more interesting writings are actually older, because people that were writing those books at that time, even though Edgar Cayce had passed away, still had access to ask questions from his family, from his kids, from people that were directly connected with him while he was alive. So, I mean, one of the things I said this to Erica, so Erica's going to remember this. One of Edgar Cayce's predictions, and if I remember this correctly, because this caught my attention for a whole lot of reasons, which I'll be happy to babble about in a minute. One of Edgar Cayce's predictions is that the purest form of Christianity would come out of China. Now, when Cayce made that prediction, China was largely Buddhist, atheist. A lot of Christianity had virtually no place in Chinese history at that point in time, in their culture, in anything. I mean, I know a lot of Chinese people are Christians, and I'm not trying to judge that, but at that time, to make a prediction so he says the purest form of Christianity is going to come from China. And he made a comment about the turn of the century. He made a comment that it was probably something, but by the comments that he made then, it was kind of implying something that could or should be happening around now. We know that China is not a Christian country. There's Christians in China, but we know that but what's happening in China right now, and I didn't pronounce it last time. Remember, I didn't pronounce it properly. Falun Gong. Do you remember? Does anybody know how to pronounce that?
No, I'm no help.
Falun Gong, it is a meditative Buddhist-oriented practice coming out of China right now that is basically about the concept that worrying about earthly matters is not what we're on earth for. We're on earth for meditation, introspection, and enlightenment. So, unless I'm completely misunderstanding, I can't remember how to pronounce it. Anyway, so this particular belief system that's coming out of China right now, and there's a whole lot of controversy around it. So, and he basically said this kind of philosophy and thought is going to like sweep the world and bring in a new form of perfect Christianity. It's like, okay, but we know in our modern time, okay, if we assume that this is the group he's talking about, because it is the only religious revolution happening in China right now, this is a Buddhist thought. So it's like, from our context, we go, oh, wait, pants? Who's talking about pants?
Don't worry about it.
Oh, wait. Yeah. Yes, I'm wearing pants this week. Yeah, I had to get up and go get a battery, and I wasn't wearing pants because it was just super stuffy in the house. So I had to get up. I turned the camera to Lisa, not realizing that she was just uncomfortable. Well, not uncomfortable. I turned the camera. I thought it was only going to be for about 3 seconds.
I was so sick last weekend.
She was not feeling well. She looked like crap. I turned the camera.
Thanks, babe.
Snicker. This will be I'm going to giggle for 3 seconds and get on with my day. I reach over for the battery pack for my tablet, and it was all tangled up in some stuff. And I'm digging and fighting, and I can't turn the camera back because then you're going to see me and my no pants. I was wearing underwear. It was fine, but yeah. So that was that. That was last week. I'm wearing pants this week.
She flashed my sickness at you guys.
I flashed her sickness in order to avoid flashing chunks of my ass. It was just the way it went. Anyway, so okay. So I'm over explaining this this religion that's coming out of China right now, but it's like I kind of like when this stuff first came up about this religion in China and what was happening. It's like, but that perfectly matches exactly what Edgar Cayce said was going to be perfect Christianity. And it's like, but if you are flexible in what Christianity means, and that is the concept of spiritual growth and working your way back to God is true of every single religion that exists. So this is not meant to be a religious debate, but if you take the word Christianity and translate it in your mind to be spirituality as Cayce was able to understand it in his time, then it changes the context of everything that you read and every reference to Christianity and religion and mainstream religion that he makes. So the Christian concept of peace and love your fellow man and be a spiritual person is exactly what. Can you even just like look up? Oh, can't even look up that word. I cannot. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Anyway, so a lot of people may know what the religion is, but so yes, spirituality. So if you take every single reference to Christianity in the books that are written in the 60s and 70s, and just mentally translate it to spirituality or the generalized concept of spiritual growth, and God as the universal concept of God versus the Christian concept. Anyway, so that's that. The train took a derail. Look, I'm going to come back to the point now, and back to the point is that a lot of his writings from back then are a lot more coherent. They make a lot more sense. They're a lot less judgmental. For strange, even in spite of sounding strangely judgmental by the consistent use of the word Christian, it's less judgmental because he's just using terminologies that he understands. If you'd have tried to talk to him about a Buddhist, he probably would have never heard of one. It's like, what's a Buddhist? I don't know what you're talking about. So I don't know where that's going to be. Top 10 predict. Oh yeah. Oh my God, so much of his stuff. Like the other prediction that's really interesting is him talking about Atlantis. And then he said in 68 or 69, and he died in 1945. In 68 or 69, portions of Atlantis are going to start to be found under the sea. And then the Bimini Wall gets found. So it's really, really interesting how some of this stuff happens. Some of the other concepts that he talked about was pole shifts. You know, blah, blah, blah. When the poles shifted, this happened. When the poles shift back, this is what's going to happen. The reality is that pole shifts as a scientific concept was barely pseudoscience in his time.
Check this one out. Hold on. It's going to be a second.
Oh, so that's okay, Brienne. Watch the rest. I'm just babbling in circles anyway. Look up Edgar Cayce. You'll find a whole bunch of stuff. His Association for Research and Enlightenment still exists today. It is I'm not a member. It is a paid organization that runs on donations. They have a massive library. They have a visitor center. They used to run a hospital. That's now the offices. If you want to get a good snapshot picture of what we're talking about, that's a good spot to start. I go there and I look up some of the stuff, and I was like, right, he did this. Because if you look up Edgar Cayce talks about blah on Google, you'll come to documentation, you'll come to things that you can just click on and read without having to pay a membership fee to go get to it. Yeah, the people of Earth shall meet the people of the universe. As we approach the golden age, the veils shall be removed. The people of the earth shall become aware of the people of the universe. This was amazingly a very difficult Christian concept. And this is where I'm getting at saying he struggled because Christianity and the idea of civilizations not part of the earth, therefore not having had a chance to experience Jesus and God and our version of religion, can't exist. They cannot exist in the same theology. They can't. So when he makes comments like this and then finds out about it afterwards, he's like, oh my God, why would I say that? That's not Christian. Christianity does not accept the possibility of non-human intelligences, because they might be children of God, but obviously they haven't gotten the word of God, because we're the only ones that have that. Do you know what I mean? So this is the stuff that he struggled with. Yes, Christ consciousness is actually not a religion, but a spiritual goal. I do believe that, and I believe that is what. I believe I believe that those are the concepts that Cayce discussed at length in his readings, and because they don't fit the literal word-for-word doctrine of Christianity, he struggled with that. But because Christianity was the only thing he had to compare it to, he spoke of it in Christian terms. Yes, honey. I love it. I gotta turn the camera on because she's literally sitting there like this. I love you.
The top 10 predictions was mentioned. I'm going to put it up on the screen so you can briefly speak to each one of these top 10.
Now, is it top 10 Cayce predictions or just okay? I'm looking at the TV. We could be casting, so
no, too many delays.
Not now, later.
Okay, first one is Bimini Road.
Yes, terminology, not Christianity. It's really hard to.
Bimini Road.
She has snapped. I snapped my fingers at the dogs.
Okay, number 10, Bimini Road in Atlantis.
Top 10 predictions. Yes. So that in 1968 he predicted that Atlantis would come to the surface. He made other predictions that it's like, well, a top secret research expedition by the government would never be released to the public. So you kind of got to.
He predicted it in 1938, and he said it expected in 68 or 69.
Mm-hmm.
Bimini Road was discovered in 68.
In 68.
Okay.
He predicted that here's part of the catch-22 of this. He predicted that a giant crystal was going to be found under the sea, proving that that is how Atlantis produced power. But if a government organization gets to it before Joe Public does, we're never going to hear about it. So we are operating against that as well. What happened?
Oh, nothing. Okay, next. You want to go to the next one?
Yeah, I'm going to back up for just 1 second. Yeah. So what, yes, so what Amethyst Ascension says, I think you are right. I think it just came down to terminology, not actual Christianity. Again, and I know I'm being repetitive. This one point, this and his unwillingness to take money are the two reasons why I say that even though some of his predictions have turned out to not, some of his predictions have failed to come to pass for various reasons, but this is why I say there is absolutely 100% something to this guy, because the two things that the fakes of his time, they took the money and they made sure they didn't, they took the money and they had no religious conflict in what they were doing. He did not take the money. He was regularly conflicted religiously. But I do think that the conflict of Christianity versus terminologies, it was absolutely a terminology issue, because what he was describing was not the Christianity of the Bible. He also spoke about the Assyrians.
Are you ready for the next one?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Jamie Kelly says yes, but a poop ton have been true. So many of his predictions are true, and a lot of his predictions that didn't come true, like, oh, Atlantis hasn't been found because what was found, people are pretending it's not. Well, that can't be real, so it didn't happen. Yes.
Ready for the next one?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry, I'm doing the thing.
The next one is deaths of 2 presidents. Do you know about this?
Vaguely.
In 1939, Edgar Cayce predicted the deaths of 2 presidents.
Oh, Kennedy.
Saying you are to have turmoil, you are to have strife between capital and labor, you are to have a division in your own land before you have the second of the presidents that next will not live through his office, a mob rule.
Yes.
President Franklin Roosevelt died in office. Cayce went on to say, unless there is more give and take consideration for those who produce with better division of the excess profits from labor, there must be greater turmoil in the land. President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas in '63.
Yes.
So Roosevelt and Kennedy.
But there's arguments that it wasn't Roosevelt, because Roosevelt, there's different, because he was clear as to what the political climate was going to be at the time, and the second assassination is going to be in a much more mob rule mentality type of environment.
The collapse of the Soviet Union.
Yep, he predicted that. I remember that. He predicted, though, that what was going to come about, what was going to evolve from that. And this is kind of interesting, because he predicted that what was going to come from that, I believe, and I would have to look it up. So if I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments. That once the Soviet Union collapsed, that as it restructured, it would eventually, and obviously eventually can be 1 day to 1 million years, become a very peaceful and positive influence in the world.
Yeah, he said, the quote is in here.
Okay.
Through Russia comes the hope of the world, not in respect to what is sometimes termed communism, no, but freedom, that each man will live for his fellow man. The principle has been born there. It will take years for it to be crystallized, yet out of Russia comes again the hope of the world.
Yes. So Russia is actually going to take its place as a world leader in the kind of things that we don't assume. When we think Russia, we do not associate the things that Russia is going to eventually become known for.
Ready for the next one?
Yep. And I do believe that one, by the way.
Stock market crash and the Great Depression.
He was still alive when that one happened, so yes.
In 1924, he predicted the stock market would crash in 29 and also taught his clients how to prepare for the crash and how to play the bull market.
Yep.
His clients did not pay attention to him and lost all they had when the stock market crashed.
Yes.
Stock market crash.
Yes, because people were, yes, he was talking about that, because he talked about the stock market crash because of the hardship. I mean, the stock market crash coincided with several crop failures, I think it was. I would actually have to go look it up. But the stock market crash leading to the Great Depression was also, like, they were Dust Bowl years. So a lot of people, like, there were people, like, yeah, there was some pretty desperate people back then, and he had a lot to say about it. But yeah, he actually was okay. He was financially okay. Him and the people that took his advice, nobody got rich. Nobody came out of the Depression. Like, well, there probably were some people who saw the writing on the wall, But yeah, he came out of it with a stable job, with everything he came out of it intact.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next.
Next is revolutions in foreign lands. He predicted in March 1935 that many foreign nations would have revolutions unless there was more spiritual attitude raised in groups. In 1936, the Spanish Civil War broke out. Japan invaded China, Italy invaded Ethiopia, and Joseph Stalin elevated the Great Purges throughout Russia.
Yeah.
Huh. I hadn't heard about this one. Do you know anything about that? Because that doesn't.
Well, no, he predicted. Well, he made a series of predictions. Something's going on because he made it. Okay, Edgar Cayce. Don't forget, he died in 1945. So the final years of his life were during the war. He made a series of predictions as to things that were going to happen that would ultimately lead up to the war, and almost all of his predictions regarding the war were true. They came true.
Rise and fall of Adolf Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
You know about that?
Yeah. Well, no, honey, that's what I just said. I don't know if they're talking about a specific.
No, they were talking about the Spanish Civil War before.
Yeah, he predicted a lot of that stuff. He predicted most of it, and he predicted
Jews returning to Israel. He predicted in 1932 that the Jews would return to Israel and advised the Jews to regard the anti-Semitism in Europe as the time to fulfill the biblical prophecy for them to return. The nation of Israel was then reestablished in May 1948 as he predicted, which was then followed by war between Israel and the Arab countries surrounding it.
No, I do remember there was a prediction about that. I think there was a whole series of predictions. I think there was more than just one, because during the events leading up to and during the war, he was bombarded. Like, he was doing readings on that like a lot. So there was a lot of material that came out of it.
Alliance between the U.S. and Russia.
Yes, I read about that one. This is going to be an interesting one because he's definitely talked about an alliance between the U.S. and Russia, and not as some backroom deal that's just for the sake of the people in power, but as a true alliance for the benefit of everybody.
He also talked about the shift of the Earth's poles, which you already spoke about.
Shift of the Earth's poles, which is a concept which in his time was a concept nobody had heard of, and yet now we understand science. Now we have scientifically proven that the poles shift, and I forget what the time frame is. Something like every 20,000 years. Yeah. So, but we've figured out that because of the way the magnetic field works, that the Earth doesn't shift, but the magnetic field reverses. And we figured that out scientifically. The proof is there. That they weren't even talking about that back then. Yes. What absolutely makes no sense to me is that many parts of the Bible were written or about prophets in the Bible. However, going forward, anyone else predicted anything was false. Interesting. What the Bible did was said, if you were not correct 100% of the time, then the very first time one of your predictions failed to come true, that meant that you were operating on behalf of the devil and were to be disregarded completely. So that's why that kind of protects what the prophets say, at the expense of not being willing to believe anything else after that. Yeah, there's something about us being due for another magnetic reversal, and we've scientifically proven that it happens. We don't know if it's a spontaneous event or if it's something that like just slowly happens over time. That's why the Earth's magnetic pole continues to wander.
He predicted his own death?
Yeah. No, that's what I said about after he did that. He did that reading that said if he kept doing 8 to 10 readings a day, he would exhaust himself, and if that happened, he was uncertain. It was uncertain or unlikely that he would recover. He ignored the advice, continued giving readings, finally collapsed, did one last reading on that, and then just didn't recover.
Wow.
Yeah, the last one was about 780,000 years ago. So the pole shifts. Yeah, he did predict his own death. He did. I'm not sure if he stated when, but he was not surprised to die when he died. Yeah, he was a real humanitarian. That's why he kept doing what he did in spite of the financial hardship that him and his family lived through, the ridicule, the soul searching. I guess I'm using soul searching as a generic term, but yeah, a lot of what he did deeply conflicted with his sincerely. His religious beliefs were sincerely held. we can argue about the beliefs themselves, but you can't dispute that when somebody sincerely holds that belief, it's different. You can't, it's like so some of the stuff, yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, the Earth's axis has been slowly changing in position. Yes, because the Earth's axis also shifts every X number of years. They've proven, like back 12,000 years ago, when the Sahara was still green, our axis was in a different direction, and it goes through, and apparently it's predictable, and it goes through a progression every 20,000 years, and we're not due for another one right now. We're due for a pole shift. We don't know how that's going to affect us. We have no way of knowing if that literally means the entire planet flips, or if it's just the magnetic field, or if it's a combination. We don't know. So that's like the crazy shit. And Cayce would have, that's quantum physics level shit, and he didn't, and he's making predictions on it. So, oh, Brianne, you're still here.
Yeah, she said she had to go for dinner. You misread her earlier.
Oh,
she's back.
Oh, you're back. Okay.
She's saying she's back.
Yeah, the polar caps are supposed to shift every 26,000 years. Yeah, that's the oh no, that's the that's the tilt. The tilt changes because the Earth's orbit is not completely round. So when it's winter here and we're furthest away from the sun, not only is Australia tilted towards the sun, but we're at the point in the orbit where we're also physically closer to the sun. That's why it's hot. That's why temperatures in Australia and the southern hemisphere are hotter than the northern. But over the next 13,000 years, it's gonna shift so that in the summertime, Australian summers are going to be cooler like ours are now because they'll be out here, and our winters are that we're going to get Australian summers. That's what we're going to get.
Have you heard about the Edgar Cayce map of future U.S. coastline?
Yes. Oh my God. Look that up. Look that up.
I'm on it now.
Oh my God. Okay. Edgar Cayce has predicted that sea level rising. Okay. Archaeologically, most of the Mississippi Basin and the plains was at one point the bottom of a shallow sea. And we have all sorts of theories about when, where, and how that happened, but we have the fossil evidence of shells and ocean bottom to prove it. Basically, Edgar Cayce is saying that through a series of earthquakes, cataclysms, events, whatever, and sea level rising, because he names various things at various times.
The thing I read said he specifically had a dream. One of his trans-state dream things, he was literally on the Colorado coastline.
Yeah. Yeah,
this is the map here.
He has predicted that. He predicted some of his future lives, and in one of his future lives, he's going to be living. In one of his future lives, he's going to be living kind of where he is now in the Virginia Beach area, Virginia Beach, North Carolina, isn't it? And basically, he'll be living on an island, and then the Colorado one, yeah, that's what he predicted it's going to look like. And this is going to be a combination of sea level rising. And plate tectonic activity.
Yeah, well, you want to see something really interesting? Check out the U.S. Navy's map of future America.
U.S. Navy's map of future America? Okay.
Yep, check it out. Hold on, let me see if I can get it up here. Let me change this. Sorry, guys. I'm having a moment. Okay, let me get it up here.
But yeah, well, you see, yeah, then that's the Great Lakes draining into the Gulf of Mexico.
It's not so different. It's what's really.
It's not.
Check this out. Okay, so here's the U.S. Navy one.
Okay, I'm looking down.
I know there's a delay, so just a sec here.
Yeah, Red Hat Tarot. I will either have beachfront or in the water. Yeah, because enough of us. Okay, basically the central area there, that is basically the Mississippi Basin. A lot of areas along the Mississippi aren't that much above sea level. And there are projections now that if the polar ice caps continue to melt, sea level will come up high enough that the Mississippi is just not going to be there anymore because the sea is just going to overtake and rush in. The area that is on the West Coast, basically those are areas, if the right type of like the Juan de Fuca, not Juan de Fuca, the San Andreas Fault, A significant rupture of the San Andreas Fault could create the kind of channel that would let the water flow let the ocean water flow to the interior. Look at the Straits of Gibraltar. Historically, they've proved, and this is going to blow your mind, they have proved that at one point in history, most, if not all, of the Mediterranean Sea was dry land, and the Straits of Gibraltar basically formed a natural wall that held the Atlantic out, and that the area is geologically active. So some event, erosion, an earthquake, something, finally let the water flow in, and it filled up the Mediterranean Sea. And this is something that we've proved has happened.
It's supposedly debunked. I'm going to link an article so you guys can read about it.
But it's not debunked. A significant plate tectonic event.
No. This particular map that I'm showing now has supposedly been debunked and wasn't really released by. Anyways, I'm gonna.
Okay, I've seen a similar map. There are maps. You might even be able to look one up right now. There are sea level rising maps that you can look at. Ooh, somebody's cooking something nice.
I know, I smell it.
We're in a condo, so sometimes if neighbors are cooking with their windows open, we can smell their dinner cooking, and somebody's having something really nice. Or anyway, I'm sorry, I'm just distracted because it smells. I want to go find them. The sea level rising maps, and you press on it, and what happens if the sea level rises? And you can see that a big chunk of the Mississippi Delta and inland disappears at 300 feet.
I'm looking at it right now. Earth will look like if we melt polarized caps.
Yeah. Well, this is the interesting thing. This is the interesting thing is that we've already proven geologically that at one point the polarized caps, the Earth was ice free from pole to pole. I just burped. We've proven that it was ice free from pole to pole at least once in our geologic history. We've proven that these areas that Cayce is projecting as being as returning to as subsiding underwater for, let's just call it for one reason or another, have previously been underwater. That whole area outlined in the Mississippi that he shows, that he predicts, was not just riverbed but ocean bed. Like there's evidence of salt water, like coral, things like that shouldn't be there.
Not finding a real good one.
Yes, my video on Atlantis spoke of this too, and it did. My video on Atlantis talked about because Cayce made a significant number of predictions and did a huge number of readings on what Atlantis was like, what was going on there, where it was located, what the world looked like at the time, how it sunk, why it sunk, and when and where the evidence of its existence is to be found. He did a lot on it. Yeah, the map does line up with Edgar Cayce's, but if you take a look at what did North America look like a million years ago, you'll see the shallow. I believe it's 1 million or 2 million. You'll see the shallow sea. Lisa's trying to find the one that is a little bit more archaeologically sound. But yeah, no, it's crazy. And the funny thing is, this is something my son actually told me. What they've discovered is that like a lot of the bedrock throughout some of these areas that are predicted to like sink is not granite but limestone, and that the limestone is being, seawater basically dissolves limestone. So did you find it? Oh, she's not finding it.
I'm not as fast as I want.
If anybody else can find a link, share the link, and then we can open it that way too. But yeah, no. So Edgar Cayce.
Oh, here's a map of North America in the late Cretaceous.
Cretaceous. That's probably one of them. Yeah.
Okay, let me open this one up.
Because we don't know. Okay, we know that these areas are no longer underwater, but we really don't know why they're above sea level. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, Lake Titicaca in the Andes, there's evidence that portions of Lake Titicaca were at sea level. This is like high Andes, 10,000 feet elevation.
So this is
and we can extrapolate. Oh, plate tectonics, 10,000 feet straight up. Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically North America in the late Cretaceous period.
Now this is a late Cretaceous a few million years ago.
You can kind of see the outlines of the states and where they would be.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, this is what North America looked like a few million years ago. So obviously we've got the proof of how we live today to know that land masses can rise and fall. That's kind of all I'm defending on those predictions. Land masses can rise, land masses can fall over time. And we've got the proof we have the archaeology to prove that happened. So to say that it's not going to happen again is problematic. Even if you do not believe that even if you believe that Edgar Cayce was a complete and total hoax, it makes no sense to believe that it's not possible for these things to happen. So it's two separate conversations wrapped in one. I do believe that he had the ability to see this, and how true it's going to be, how it's going to what it is, how it's going to come about. Sometimes his readings address stuff like this, sometimes they don't. One of the other things that Edgar Cayce did readings on was past lives. He's just fascinating. I could probably do 2 or 3 hour videos on just individual topics within the wide range of subjects that he covered, because he did readings on everything. Akashic records, he predicted that in a chamber under the Sphinx. Well, this one will blow your mind just a little bit. He predicted that a chamber would be found under the Sphinx, in which would be found a copy of the Akashic Hall of Records. He predicted, or he stated, and this is something that again he struggled with from a religious standpoint. The Akashic records are supposed to be this spiritual record, to exist on the spiritual plane. And Cayce says, no, there are copies of it that exist on the physical plane that are accessible to people who know how to read them. And I'm not sure, I'm kind of envisioning this kind of crystal ball mentality. It's like, if let's assume that all of the stereotypes about a crystal ball is real, but if you don't know how to turn it on, you can't use it. And that's kind of how he ends up describing, to the way I perceive it, how he kind of ends up describing Akashic records, is that they exist on the spiritual plane, but they also exist, but they can also be found on the physical plane. And he names 3 locations where copies are kept. One is in a chamber under the Sphinx, one is in sunken Atlantis, and one is apparently in a lost civilization in Guatemala.
I have I have the quote, I believe.
Which one?
The one you're just talking about.
The Akashic records?
Yeah.
Okay. The interesting thing is, so he predicts secret chambers under the Sphinx. The interesting thing is that now that we have things like ground penetrating radar and echolocations, things that did not exist in his day, the concept that it might exist in his day was so far-fetched that it was unreal. We've proven that there are hidden chambers under the Sphinx. And scientists are just waiting for the Egyptian government to give them permission, because obviously to dig down into these chambers under the Sphinx could risk damaging the structure above. Could risk the chamber collapse, the Sphinx itself collapsing, because it's an old structure. There's hidden chambers under the Sphinx.
Here's the actual quote.
And some of these chambers are apparently quite massive. They've also found what appears to be yet another hidden chamber inside the Pyramid of Cheops.
Are you able to read that?
Okay, I'm going to do this, guys. It would be, well, if this entity were to seek either of the 3 phases of the ways and means in which those records of the activities of individuals were preserved. He talked in a very, very formal way. So basically, the 3 phases, the 3 copies, the 3 types, the 3 styles, of the ways and means in which those records of the activities of individuals are preserved. A record of activities of individuals and referring to past lives, that's the Akashic records. He specifically calls them the Akashic records in some of his readings. Another of the places of the records that leadeth from the Sphinx to the Hall of Records in the Egyptian land, and another in the Aryan or Yucatan land, where the temple there is overshadowing same.
You skipped the part about the one in the Atlantean land that sank.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The one in the Atlantean land that sank, which will rise and is rising again.
Yep.
And the funny thing is, what they've also proven is that the landmass in the Bimini Atoll is rising. They've proven that it's just simple activity, like basically some of these areas are geologically active. As plate tectonics takes its toll, some of the areas, some of the landmass, some of the areas, some of the underwater areas in Bimini are less. They're still underwater, but they're closer to the surface than they were a few years ago. Some areas are sinking. It's like, so it's a given. It's a give and take. But yeah, so.
I found the his quote, another quote where he talks about the Akashic records.
Okay.
If you want me to throw it up?
Sure.
There it is.
You were doing that concentration face that you make sometimes. Oh, and now
you like this face.
This is the face I'm getting now. Okay.
Okay, read the quote.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Tremendous influence upon our everyday lives, our relationships, our feelings. Okay. Upon time and space is written the thoughts, the deeds, the activities of an entity, as in relationships of its to its environs, the hereditary influences as directed, or judgment drawn by or according to what the entity's ideal is. Hence, as it has been oft called, the record is God's book of remembrance, and each entity, soul, as the activities of a single day of an entity in the material world, either makes some good or bad or indifferent, depending upon the entity's application of self towards that which is the ideal manner for the use of time, opportunity, and the expression for that which each soul enters a material manifestation, or reincarnation. The interpretation then is drawn here is where the desire and hope that in opening this for the entity, the experience may be one of helpfulness and hopefulness.
It's all gobbledygook.
Oh, you just want me to. You just want me to.
Please.
Lisa wants me to say it in normal human terms. Okay, this is how people talked in the 1800s. Like, he was born in 1877. So this is not an unusual way for somebody to talk, especially somebody who is like all tranced out. So basically, the Akashic records, the thoughts and deeds and activities of an entity, that's the Akashic records. That, in relationship to its environs, a hereditary influence as directed. So basically, if basically who and what you are on a soul level versus who and what you are trying to become in this particular incarnation. So it's like, so she tells me she wants me to go over it, and then she takes it off the screen so I can't see it. You're mean. You're a mean one.
I can put it back up.
You're mean. She's a mean one. Tell Lisa she's mean.
Nobody tell me I'm mean.
I need the internet to tell Lisa she's mean.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So basically, that's the Akashic records. He did have a very by the way, a 9th grade education, and his way of speaking while in trance was, he had a 9th grade education, which was considered sufficient, more than enough. There was no shame in it. At that time in history, a 9th grade education was quite educated, but the way he talks in trance displays an even higher level of education that he simply did not access in his lifetime.
I have a request.
Yes.
There is a list of 7 predictions yet to come that I thought might be fun to
Woo! We'll do that one next. Anyway, yeah, not mean, just squirrely. You have your defender. I will stop now. Then I'll be nice to you since you've been sick all week.
I'm the internet squirrel.
You're the internet squirrel. Okay, so basically, Cayce's readings are that the Akashic, there is a physical form of the Akashic records that can be found in 3 different locations. One is under the Sphinx. Fun fact, chambers have been discovered under the Sphinx, and some apparently have been accessed, or plans are in place to access them. It's a whole different topic involving a whole different fun fact, things, theory, whatever. So, but yeah, he predicted this stuff. Turns out that there's been, and ground penetrating radar didn't exist in the 1930s. When he was making these predictions, some of the equipment necessary to even some of the equipment that is necessary for the discoveries that have been made in the last 25 years wasn't even on anybody's radar as a possible thing that could be invented. So there's that. Okay, so he's saying there's the Akashic records. Basically, what he reports is doing, goes into a trance, looks at the Akashic records, finds out what your mission is in this life. This is what you're supposed to try and accomplish in this life. he believed that if your duty in this life was to accomplish A and you didn't do that, that it would change the outcome of your life, that it could lead to, and I don't want to say mental disorders, because they had he had a very interesting approach to mental disorders, and he actually managed to cure people who were reporting the symptoms of things like schizophrenia. So but don't forget, certain illnesses and conditions could produce those kinds of symptoms, and those are illnesses and conditions that we can easily cure, that we can easily identify and cure now. If you have untreated, just the simple flu when it's untreated, malaria is a good example. Malaria gives you hallucinations. You can have a low-grade malaria infection and have hallucinations without being a whole. So there are things, and I don't want to get too rambly and convoluted. So he is reported to have cured people of significant mental health conditions using treatments that were not standard for their time. Uh-oh, what are we doing?
I sneezed.
Oh, now.
Oh no!
Lisa has the cutest little "achoo" sneeze, and I'm mean, and we know I'm mean. So I basically decided one day that they were hamster farts. Achoo! If you've ever seen a super fuzzy little hamster butt, achoo! So yeah, hamster farts. I'm sorry. I have to tell the story every chance I get because I think it's just hilarious. And she's too busy laughing. She always laughs too much to get truly, truly pissed off at me. So it's one of those horrible things I can do that I get away with. Anyway, okay. So we've got Akashic records. So now we're ranging all the way over to Egypt. His reporting of his past lives was that he was a high priest during the early Egyptian empire. He provided the name. He provided what he was the priest of, what his duties were. He gave an in-detailed life description of his life as this high priest. He also gave a detailed description that he was also one of the priest scientists in the time of Atlantis. So his own past life regressions put him in times and places where he claims to be saying that he has had very, very close firsthand knowledge of this stuff when it was current events and not archaeology. Because he says the reason why in his readings he says the reason why he knows these records are there is because he helped put them there. He was either one of the one. No, he was there using them. He something, and I forget where that came in. So he did past life readings on himself. I forget what he said his name was, but he actually said that he actually pointed out evidence of his existence could be found, and something happened, and this evidence came. Something happened, and the things that he said that could be found that proved that this particular high priest existed was found. References, a hieroglyphic reference in a different tomb referring to, if the hieroglyphic references in tombs might say like in King Tut's tomb, it would say this is the tomb of King Tut. He was the king, and it might say these were his advisors and name the names, and this is the person who built the tomb for him. And so different people and different names were given in telling one person's story, and the name that he says he had, and the position and the temple that he said he was a priest of, this was the information that he said could be found was apparently found. I don't know very much about it because this was in a series of books. The internet didn't exist back when I was reading these books, so I can read the reference in the book that says, oh, and on this date this was found and this was what it was and here's how it connects, is fine, but I cannot remember the reference. I can't remember the name. I can't remember the details, so I can't remember how to go look it up, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
You want me to try and look?
Well, yeah, Edgar Cayce, Egyptian high priest. That might be the search term that I'll give it to you. I didn't have time to go looking for it. Anyway, so we've got past lives, we've got Egypt, we've got Atlantis. Let's talk about reincarnation. He gave in-depth talks on reincarnation as it existed to both time and space. And he detailed how he was going to have future existences. I can't remember anything about mentioning about other people and what they could expect their next incarnation. Rata? That sounds right.
The story of Rata.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know I interrupted you.
Yeah, but apparently there was some evidence. Apparently some of the evidence that Cayce would be found to prove that this was a real person was found. And this is like predictions given in the 30s. The ability to predict, there's no way. Something like 85% of his predictions have so far been proven to come true. So that's a little crazy there. So yeah, so reincarnation, basically, and this is an interesting thing. Basically, Cayce's, I gotta put this here. I'm not gonna see anything you guys say. Basically, Cayce's idea. So what have we covered so far? We should have been keeping a bullet list. So basically, Cayce's idea of reincarnation.
Predictions still to come.
Oh, predictions still to come. Oh yeah, what time is it now? Maybe we can finish with that.
You just gotta let me know.
It's almost 7. We got. I'm doing it again. Okay, so past lives. In a nutshell, he gave readings detailing other people's past lives. He would give information on how events in the past lives would affect opinions, ideals, and behaviors in the current life. And again, like as an example, somebody writing to him to say that they had a certain phobia, and then he would say, well, in your past life, interacting with this thing that you're now terrified of was the reason you died. Snake bites, being terrified of snakes. Well, in your past life, you were bitten by a cobra and died. Well, there's not a whole lot of other examples to give. You guys know what I mean, because you guys know what I mean. Because we're all into this stuff and it's cool. Are you guys having fun? Please tell me you're having fun. Anyway, oh yeah, I sneezed 14 to 15 times in a row. I sound horrible. I sound like a lung is going to come spewing out. Anyway, so his outline, virtually every single one of these readings basically has the similar theme that you are put on this earth for a reason. You have lessons to learn, and stop. And that your goal of each individual life is to learn. Sometimes your entire life might be geared towards learning a single lesson, and sometimes your entire life might be geared towards learning several lessons, or to give the entity the experiences so that in the next life you'll be better prepared to learn the lesson you'll be expected to learn at that time. He doesn't really give a lot of information on between lives, but he does talk about it. So he does talk about the astral plane, about connecting with God, about the in-between life phases where you have some capacity to pick and choose how and where you're going to learn, how and where you're going to try and attempt to learn those lessons. Lessons is now a word. I'm inventing shit. I know. It's like story time with Peggy, isn't it? Lisa does this too. Lisa's like, oh, just keep telling me shit. This is fun. And that's fine. That's fine. Just the odd check-in once in a while from you guys, so I know that the stream didn't die and that I'm talking to just a dead air. So anyway, so where my personal beliefs kind of complement this, I've always believed that you don't just show up for the first day of kindergarten and graduate high school by the end of the day. You got to keep going back. There's a shit ton of stuff to learn. Some stuff you learn slowly, some stuff you learn quickly. If you don't learn enough stuff, you have to repeat the grade or the class or and you just slowly move forward. Like you can be in the 12th grade, ready to graduate, and still in 9th grade English because you're just not fucking getting it. So there can be more than one, like in high school, you could have 8 to 10 subjects in a year. There can be more than one lesson. There can be more than one reason for taking the class, the lesson. But it's all part of progressing towards a goal. In real life terms, that's finishing grade school, finishing high school, maybe a college degree, maybe a university degree, maybe a bachelor's degree. You're going to get on the job. You got your training period. Then first they train you, then they let you do the job for a while, but you're supervised. Then a little less supervision, and then they let you work on growing your skills, and then maybe they'll let you train other people. It's always, everything that we do is a progression. And I think that reincarnation is real. And I think the purpose of reincarnation is to constantly work your way through those progressions towards an enlightened state. It's a very Buddhist concept. Oh, I'm missing something. For all that ye may ever keep is just what you give away, and that you give away is advice, counsel, manner of life, and you live yourself. The manner in which you treat your fellow man, your patience, your brotherly love, your kindness, your gentleness, that you give away. That is all that you may possess in these other realms of consciousness. They say you can't take it with you, but that is what you take with you. So yeah, you're not going to be any good but yeah, I think it's the, yeah, I think reincarnation exists. I think it's real. I think it has its purpose. The Now, reincarnation is mentioned in the Bible, but very specifically. So I'll leave that alone, and maybe we'll do another chat on that, a chat on that one day. But it makes no logical sense it makes no logical sense that I live my life, somebody else lives their life, somebody else lives their life. This person has to work really hard and struggle to get ahead, and they get ahead, and they're a decent person, and life is really fucking good for them because of everything that they've done to overcome their circumstances, improve themselves, be a decent human being, and now they're just a great fucking guy who's done really well for himself. Okay. Then I've got me. I'm just an average person living an average life. I do some shit. It's fine, and everything's fine. And I've had a pretty stable run. I've had nothing to overcome, not a lot. I didn't have to learn again. There's always that guy. Oh, that just comes easy for Joe. It's like, okay. And then you've got the kid that's in. Then you've got the person. Then you've got people that are just in such a difficult situation that no matter what they do, they're never getting out of it. They're like, and we're not just talking things like physical poverty or things like that, but we're talking like, how can, at the end of a lifetime where one person had an easy life, one person overcame challenges, one person just didn't, how can we all be judged on an equal? There's no such thing as an equal playing field. So if you're ascribing to the idea of a just God, what kind of a just God says, okay, well, I gave you the easy road, I gave you the impossible challenge, and I just made you so you didn't even have to try. But you all get rewarded. It doesn't happen that way. It does not happen that way. So why would it happen that way on a spiritual level? We are all going to have it easy. We're all going to have it hard. We're all going to have a lot of lessons to learn. We're all going to have not a shit ton that needs to be done. Just like, maybe this is the vacation. Maybe this is the vacation one, right? We're all going to have that. For each soul enters for a purposefulness, that it may be a channel, may be seen, may find expression and experience of the fellow man. Each soul enters for a purpose, and it makes no logical sense on any level why each soul gets only one chance, and yet the circumstance, each soul enters for a purpose, but each purpose, but doesn't mean that you can only do it once. You don't just get one shot. It makes no sense. I believe in reincarnation. I believe in it I believe in it the same way Edgar Cayce describes it. So I'm more of an advocate than a let's discuss the possibilities person. What's up, hon?
Go see this next one.
The soul seeks growth as truth, as life, as light, as in itself. God is, and again, the religious reference, spirituality, just exchange the words. Spirituality is, and so is life, light, truth, hope, love. And those that abide in same grow. Those that abide in the shadow of the night, or the conditions become or make for the fruits of these do not grow. And the thing is that, yeah, and I think the idea that we're working our way through a cycle, and that cycle can take us into spiritual growth or into spiritual regress on the path, the path, right? Yeah. So I think it's I think that's exactly what reincarnation is all about. I think the concepts. Okay, and again, we're back to Edgar Cayce. You can devolve. I kid you not. I could talk for literally the next 8 to 10 freaking hours
about.
We're gonna have
a whole topic on reincarnation in the future.
Oh, I know. A lot of these topics are gonna be blah blah blah. And don't forget, Edgar Cayce said, in some ways, I'm a bit of an Edgar Cayce fangirl. I totally own it. So there's that. But the concepts of reincarnation, as he describes them, very, very, very much resonate. But the interesting thing is that they do not resonate within the Christian circles that would have them. Even the most liberal Christian circle at that time would not have resonated with this, which is really interesting. So again, but this goes back to that my 2 reasons. He did not take money, and it was a religious. She keeps pointing at the camera. It's like, this is going to be bad. She's just going to sit there like this from now on. I can just tell.
You keep looking at me.
Yeah, I've trained myself to replace. This is actually Gender Middle-Aged Baby Witch, if you want to put that up. This is something that I've been doing, and I find that when I change the word, that I'll do a little aside for a minute here. I don't identify as a Christian. If I had to pick, I'd probably call myself a Buddhist. So let's just start with that. But I find the Bible itself contains a lot of very interesting philosophy. And it does. And I find that Jen the Middle-Aged Baby Witch says, I've trained myself to replace God with universe. Anytime I read or hear the word, it makes things a lot easier to take in sometimes. I find that when I take the word God, as I know it was if I take the word God and I replace it with universe, spirit, spirituality, any word, any spiritually related word that is in context with whatever the idea being discussed is, it changes everything about how you perceive it. Everything. It's crazy. Because like even the 10 Commandments changes. Because something really obvious is like, oh, well, thou shalt not steal. That's pretty obvious. Thou shalt have no other God before me. That's a very, very Christian idea. But the interesting thing is that if you replace spirituality, it's like, do not engage in spiritual practices that will damage you. That kind of fits all of a sudden. But I find the Bible to be a very, very, very interesting philosophy, even though I don't believe in Christianity as the Bible describes it. I don't believe in Christianity. Like I think Jesus.
Down the rabbit hole, yo, babe.
Yeah, I said it's going to be an aside. I think Jesus was a very, very interesting person with a lot of interesting ideas, but Christianity, no. So, but I also find that I find some of that type of stuff very, very fascinating to explore when you change the words to something that makes more sense in a more logical way. Okay. Raw spirit, I replace it with goddess, but now, oh my universe, Omu is going to be a thing. We can call it Omu. There we go. Let's change it to Omu and see how let's change the word to Omu and see how religion-based philosophy suddenly means something totally new. That would be an interesting discussion all by itself. Okay, so back to that. Oh, any links that you have to share? Amethyst Ascension just mentioned a link. If you have it, the Law of One materials even talk about tarot and their Egyptian origins. If you have an interesting link that relates to concepts that Edgar Cayce has discussed, share it now. Share it in the comments after. Absolutely, I would love nothing more than to see these conversations continue. Let's turn the comment sections into discussion boards. Like I'm absolutely all for that. So I think I missed anything. Yeah, Brienne Love, I don't have a spiritual church type group, but I do believe Jesus did live on earth. There is a really interesting concept about Jesus as a prophet and as what's called a Devi. And that is somebody who's bringing enlightenment to the world. And that is a concept that is like that just covers every religion, if that makes sense. Because even the Muslims don't necessarily believe in Jesus, but they do respect who he was as a prophet spreading the message of God. And I'm not sure and I'm not going to pretend to know where those writings exist because I'm not a Muslim, but I have read those references. So there's that. Anyway, yeah, Jesus was a real person and a prophet, but a lot of that stuff gets co-opted by the person who's writing the story. So it's like, we don't know. We really don't know. He was also an Essene, E-S-S-E-N-E, and that completely changes the context of who he was in those times. Yes, honey?
Do we get to talk about his future prophecies that haven't happened yet?
Lisa would like to talk about, okay, so now we're on to religion. What haven't we covered? What Cayce?
His future prophecies.
Future prophecies, yeah. What else haven't we covered? He covered everything. Everything. If you have a topic that you're interested in, just type in the title of the topic, like spirituality, Atlantis, Egypt, Mesoamerica. Type it in, and then type in Edgar Cayce, and you will probably find references to almost everything. 14,000 recorded readings, and that was the second 20 years of his career. The first 20 years, over 8,000 known readings that were only ever partially recorded or not recorded at all, depending on what the topic was about. Okay. Oh, I do know that Edgar Cayce has been discussed on the site Coast to Coast.
I found it.
Oh, there you go. Lisa found it. Okay, Lisa would, yeah, it's 7 o'clock. We should probably think about winding down.
Future prophecies.
Lisa has found 7 future prophecies.
Yes.
There's hundreds, by the way.
Ones that I can ask people what they think.
I know. Okay, like I said, I could talk about this for the rest of the fucking week until my throat is bleeding, because there's 14,000 covering 10,000 different topics. Like,
okay, we're starting.
Okay, we're starting.
Will our lifespans as human beings be extended? And so he did quote. Oh, let me put this on the big screen. He specifically said, "Now we find."
If you take my face out, if you take me out, you'll see an even bigger picture.
Oh, I fixed it.
Okay.
You can see in the light gray.
Okay, so his response: will our lifespan as human beings be extended? Now we find that there are many changes in the body since we have had this. Many for good. Many of the organs and the conditions show the changes as come about by the neutral or so-called natural conditions and changes as the body succumbs to the effects of age or usage of the system. Just basically wear and tear, right? Much of this may be overcome. Man should live much longer than has been ordinarily given, and will. I think but you know what? I do think that that's something that's already coming true. Our lifespan, even
that's what I thought too.
When Edgar Cayce was born in 1877, I don't think the human lifespan was much more than 60 to 65 years. I mean, I'd have to look it up, but it wasn't that great. And now, I don't know, your mileage may vary, but in Canada, a woman's lifespan in Canada is about 80 years. I mean, that was unheard of in his day. Yeah. So I think that's a given. I don't think it's. I mean, there. Oh wait, what? Who said what?
Amethyst Ascension said, and I think that was pushing it, about the life expectancy.
Yeah. Life expectancy of about 60 years was probably pushing it. It was. I mean, living to become old. People did live decently. People lived decently long lives, but no.
Next, will we discover the design for a self-fueling perpetual motion machine?
Okay. I'm
gonna bring it in a bit bigger for you, so you can see some of the readings.
Okay, so Edgar Cayce says, you will have before you the gasless motor invented by. Now, the 4666, basically, in order to catalog and track all of this stuff, each individual person writing a letter, or what was all mail back then, was given a file, and it was all done by number, so that they could track all this stuff. Some people wrote in once and that was it. Some people wrote in dozens and dozens and dozens of times. So this, you will have before you the gasless motor invented by, so 4666 is a person who wrote Cayce a letter asking for advice. Just so you're aware of how this, when you see these references, it's not a year. Edgar Cayce, yes, we have the body and inquiring mind of 4666. So that's the person. They don't name the people in these just to protect the privacy of surviving family. And well, some of those people may still be alive. Who knows? Also, the associations and those conditions surrounding the perfection of motor which will develop power in its own action. As has been given, the idea and the plans as have been worked out in part along those lines that pull more of the power as produced in compression in drum, with the leads made from these forms that gather vibrations from the air as it is forced from the drum, are, as we find, the better application of the created energy in the cams. And again, ninth grade education, and he's discussing, basically, clearly he's discussing some sort of an engine design.
He's giving very detailed information.
Yeah. In the cams have been used too much slack or play is allowed in their rotation. This is the drum's head action, and these must be shortened in play. So he's giving instructions as to what this person's doing wrong with their design. The connection of 195 and 900 with same, best that these have. So
it's like he's talking to like.
Yeah, this machine, the same as brought to Washington now by Lindbergh. Now, I think
that's somebody asking him that. They're saying, is this machine the same as brought to Washington now by Lindbergh? And then he says no. As is here, the 4666 machine would operate on stationary conditions, impelling forces, even for now that in gas motors, for as tested by others, has more to do with that thrown in air and gaining its impelling force from that source.
Now, the unfortunate thing.
And it's interesting, too, because it says, would it operate perpetually if perfected? Not perpetually, but once started, could be kept in motion by created energy of its own source. He's talking about
other has to, yeah. So basically, what he's okay. This particular one that they're using as the example is kind of confusing, but he has in many readings talked about how as our science gets better, and I forget the terminology, he has talked about how not like this is a very specific example by somebody who's actually asking him for advice on creating an engine, but he has talked about how as things get more and more efficient, we will start developing motors and engines and things that use such a small amount of energy to run for an extremely long time with very little in the way. So I'm kind of having a hard time with this particular one as a prediction, because I don't think he's agreeing that it's a perpetual motion machine, but that whatever it is going to require such a small amount of energy that it might as well be. So
the next one was conflict.
I think the question is confused, but the answer makes sense. It's like we're gonna be developing stuff that is so close to perpetual motion that it will
self-driving cars and stuff like that.
Right? Well, it's not that. Like once you start like batteries that are so efficient that once you turn your device on, it'll run for months. We have that right now. Look at the remote control. Look at the battery of a remote control. The remote control for a TV takes such a minuscule amount of power that they run for 2 or 3 years. So I do think that the prediction is true. I think the question is wrong. Okay. That's my opinion. My opinion only. Sorry, guys. My opinion. Okay. What's the next one? Conflict in the Persian Gulf. Oh, yeah. He's absolutely predicted it. He's predicted that that's not going to stop until a major war breaks out. And he's also predicted that it's going to be. He's also predicted that if this shit doesn't get resolved, then it's going to lead to World War III.
Wow.
Yeah.
What about, is a new root race evolving? What's this about?
Okay, well, let me just take, I did the thing.
Just give it a second.
I started trying to scroll down. It didn't work. Is a new root race evolving? Suggests that humanity's consciousness has evolved and expanded over time. Cayce stated that his expansion of consciousness could be viewed throughout the Bible from Genesis. Am I still in the camera? I'm just like slouching everywhere, guys.
You're still there. You're just thinking.
Could be viewed throughout the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. From the reading's perspective, the next generation would be tied to the development of what Cayce termed the fifth root race. The fifth root. Now, this is interesting. I'm not necessarily sure that I'm going to agree with the question here again.
Yeah.
An evolutionary occurrence that would mark a new age. Cayce described 5 races that basically sprung up simultaneously as the root races of mankind.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So that versus a new race evolving, he has consistent. I think I disagree with the question.
Yeah.
Okay, when a 52-year-old construction engineer asked about this expanding consciousness in 1942, Cayce commented
Casey.
Cayce. I you know what? I go Cayce or Cayce because for how many years I was reading it.
Me bananas.
No, but I was reading it from books for years and years and years because before I ever heard the word pronounced.
Right.
So if you don't know how to, if you've never learned how to pronounce something, even
time.
once you know better, I have to think about it every time. Okay, commented that each individual had to essentially work with the personal soul developments in order to resonate with the new consciousness. You expect a new root race. What are you doing to prepare for it? You must prepare food for the bodies as well as their minds and their spiritual development. He has consistently predicted a new spirituality and a new awareness entering into into the human consciousness and the human experience. But I don't think he's ever specifically predicted a new race. Now, so I think he's kind of predicted that as people start to develop these new consciousness and leave the old spiritualities behind, but I don't think he's talking about, I don't think any of his predictions about this type of stuff actually spoke of an actual race of humans, but rather a new era of enlightenment and a completely new outlook on just the world in general. And that's again moving forward to, and that draws in how and why he made predictions about Russia being a beacon, true Christianity coming from China. This is how and why those predictions came about, because he's talking about a new enlightenment springing up throughout the world, this sort of thing. Okay. Will the 3 halls of records be discovered? I think they already have. Well, not 3, but I think the Giza one they've just.
Oh, but there's a comment from Brienne. Sorry.
Ooh, new spirituality might be us as spiritualists. Yeah, I think that's kind of what it is, Brienne. Now for Red Hat Tarot, maybe this refers to genetics. I don't think I personally, and this is again, you have to make up your own mind based on what you're reading, right? When he's talking about the various races of man, he's usually talking about the past. He's usually talking from a past tense about how life evolved on Earth. When he talks about new human, when he talks about going in the future, I think he's talking about spiritual outlooks, but he also talks about how your spiritual outlook can affect your physical body. So maybe we're going to be more long-lived and more healthy because we're just going to be less neurotic, less.
I'd like to be less neurotic.
I would like you to be less neurotic too. Oh, you knew I was going to go there.
I did.
You knew. You walked into it and kept talking.
You
You walked into it and kept talking anyway. I know. I don't think. Now he does make references to human evolution over time and says that that's inevitable. But I don't think he's relating. I think that's very separate from a spiritual awakening. And he does talk about a new human paradigm brought on by spiritual awakening. So I think he's talking about several different things. I do think in terms of spiritual awakening, I think that's happening now. We've got much more openness globally to talk about things like this, to actually accept them as real possibilities versus things to be ridiculed. So the 3 halls of the 3 halls of records, according to some of his predictions, they've been discovered or are waiting to be discovered. They're there. They're not. They're there and they still exist. Some of his commentaries have included references that state that if the people who find them don't know how to use them, that won't make any sense to them anyway. They're not physical books, that sort of thing. Yes, maybe he means that we'll understand the mind-body connection better. That's very likely because he talks about that. Because he talks in detail about how our physical health and our physical body has a very strong connection to our not our spirituality as in our religious beliefs, but how the soul, the spirit, the personal growth, not personal growth. It's an entire. Oh, okay, Amethyst. I'm the one that gets to do this, so yeah, I'm glad we're agreeing. I think. Yeah, December 2012, a massive shift in consciousness. Things like he's talked about stuff like that. He's talked about certain conditions being right for certain things to just kind of be triggered. But yeah, it's interesting that you keep saying spiritual awakening because that's what I believe December, whatever the date in 2012 was. I think it's, yeah, that was the end of the Mayan calendar, and the Mayan calendar is very specific in saying that when the calendar ends, a new state, a new stage, and a new it's not about how the world ends, it's about how our perception, about how it sets the stage for a new experience, and not a new experience, a new
Ascension.
ascension.
I was getting with this word.
Okay, no, that's that. Yeah, an ascension. Yeah, I forget what the date was, Erica. It was 2012. It was when the Mayan calendar ended.
Right.
Yeah, it was because it was the end of the long year. But yeah, so Edgar Cayce talked at length about stuff like this, and some of this, and again, some of the stuff he talked at length about were stuff that are things that nobody knew anything about until he mentioned it. And it's like, and now 50, 70, well, 80 years later, we're going, well, this is really interesting concepts. Oh, and by the way, this guy named Edgar Cayce was talking about it in the 40s, 30s and 40s. So
the
yeah.
questioner asks, back to the Akashic Records thing. The questioner says, give in detail what the sealed room contains, and he answers it.
Oh, a record of Atlantis in the beginning of those periods. Yeah. He talks in detail about how this is. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Can you make it a little bigger?
A bit, yeah.
So give in detail what the sealed room contains. Now, this is the sealed chamber below the Sphinx, because this is the one that Cayce has been adamantly saying we can just go up. We can, basically, he's saying we have the capacity to just go in right now, but nobody knew it was there. It's like, so, you know, here's where it is. Go open it. Now that we know it's there, the Egyptian government doesn't want to give anybody permission to excavate because it's under the Sphinx. They don't want to damage the Sphinx. They don't know what they're going to do. Give in detail what. Oh my God, it's like, okay, a record of Atlantis from the beginnings of those periods where the spirit took form or began the encasements in that land, and the developments of the peoples throughout their sojourn, with the record of the first destruction and the changes that took place in the land. Now, Edgar Cayce's predictions around Atlantis, his information around Atlantis was that Atlantis didn't disappear in a single cataclysmic event. It broke up over time and slowly sank over a few thousand years, and then the actual city state that ruled the region, that was what sank in a day. Hey, I've got like
a wheel.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm
not happening on my side.
Okay, so this position lies as the sun rises from the waters. The line of the shadow or light falls between the paws of the Sphinx that was later set as the sentinel or guard, and which may not be entered from the connecting chambers from the Sphinx's right paw, until the time has been fulfilled when the changes must be active in this sphere of man's experience, between the Sphinx and the river.
Between then the Sphinx and
the Sphinx and the river. So, I mean, Edgar Cayce has been.
I just scrolled it up a bit too, so that when
okay, yeah. In which pyramid or temple are the records mentioned in the readings given through this channel on Atlantis in April 1932? As given, that temple was destroyed at the time there was the land destruction in Atlantis. Now, one of the things they said is that, you know, once Atlantis rises, they might be able to get it. Yes, as time draws nigh, when the changes are to come about, there may be the opening of those three places where the records are one, to those three places where the records are one, to those that are initiates in the knowledge of the one God, which was an interesting way for him to say it as a devout Christian. That didn't make sense at his time. Anyway, the temple by Iltar will then rise again. Also, there will be the opening of the temple or hall of records in Egypt, and those records that were put into the heart of the Atlantean land may also be found there, that they have been kept for those that are of that group. Oh, yeah, so that's something else he said, is that after Atlantis sunk, some of the records that were saved were brought to Egypt and put under the Sphinx with what was already there. So anyway.
Yeah, and he said the records are one.
Well, because it's the same, they're copies of the same thing.
Oh, he's basically, okay, so he's not saying there's three different sets of information.
No, it's the same.
Three copies of the same information.
They're the same. Okay. Because it was, and he specifies in some of his readings that this was so that if anything were to happen, the records would be preserved.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's what he says.
Okay. Next we have, what is the shape of the world to come? So we talked about this a bit.
Yeah, he basically is new land masses are going to come up. Current land masses are going to partially or completely subside. He talks about earthquakes. He talks about sea level rising. Geologically,
this is more political.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He's talking about the enormous impact China would have on the global stage.
Yep. That is bringing true Christianity to the world. The purest form of Christianity is what he called it.
Let's see. Will there be a second coming?
Yes, it is far off as man counts time, but only a day. Wait.
Sorry, so scrolling.
China. Okay, will there be a second coming? I don't remember this one. This is new to me, so let's see. What is meant by the day of the Lord is near at hand. That has been promised through the prophet and the sages. That as has been promised through the prophet and the sages of old, the time and half time has been and is being fulfilled in this day and generation, and that soon there will again appear on the earth that one through whom many will be called to meet those that are preparing the way for his day in the earth. The Lord then will come even as you have seen him go.
Huh.
But
that's kind of trippy.
But according to
the
things that Cayce had to say about Jesus, and he never said that he never said that Jesus wasn't the Son of God, but he also never said that Jesus was who the Bible depicts him to be, and talks about him as being a prophet, a healer, bringing a new consciousness to the people and things like that. He's talked regularly about how in certain times new
You lost your train of thought.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I've still got this going in the middle, and it's like confusing me as to whether or not.
You have to just reopen your app.
Yeah, I don't know. It looks like it's still fine. Yeah, pre-hand. Holy cow, it's amazing stuff. I better be good. So one of the things that Cayce talked about in his readings was was that there are already people among us who are facilitating bringing a new consciousness into the human condition. Of course, he used different terminologies. He said it in a different way, but that's what he said. So that, I think that makes sense. There's all kinds. There's always people that we credit with furthering the goals of spiritual awareness and spiritual awakening. So I think a better question would have been. I think a better question would to see if anybody asked him, where are these people coming from? What is it that they're what teachings are they bringing?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if that's one that came true, but it makes sense. Oh, like Edgar Cayce was a huge advocate of meditation. Again, not a very Christian thing to do, which caused him problems. So yeah, there is a ton of Cayce predictions, tons and tons and tons. So yeah, he was a really, really interesting guy. He was super, super interesting. Oh, pardon me. I've been drinking pop. I'm like, why am I burping? Oh my God. I keep trying to stealth burp, but it's not working anymore. You guys, has anybody ever been like on camera or in public or in a large group of people that it's like, if I belch, that might not go over well. The minute you're in front of people where that might not go over well, that's the first thing you want to do. Each soul has a definite job to do, but you alone can find and do that job. And that's a key concept of reincarnation. Each life is lived for a reason, and it's on you to find and fulfill that reason. Sometimes the entire purpose of your life might be to facilitate a single act. Because again, one of the things that Cayce talks about is the eternal soul, is that the soul is eternal. So and that time is nothing. So yeah.
Apparently he did. Erica asked if he was a vegetarian.
I believe he was, but I would have to check. But
I just checked.
Was he?
Well, it's not so much that he was a vegetarian. I don't think.
But he really wasn't.
He has a whole bunch of readings that are in for health readings, and he's doing a lot of health readings.
That meat should be something that isn't a big part of your diet.
He suggests plant-based diets.
Less meat.
He does straight up suggest plant-based diets.
Yeah.
And some other stuff, but I think it's more like a response to health conditions.
Yes, if you have particular health condition, people that have specific health conditions, he would say, oh well, here's what your health condition is. Here's the foods you need to add to your diet, and here's the foods that you need to remove. And sometimes a lot of those diets included getting rid of meat for a while at the very least. Do not eat meat until blah. But I don't think he was very specific. I think he was more interested in. Personally, I don't think that he ate a lot of meat, but I don't think he was I think he was so close to being a vegetarian that it ceased to really matter, especially like again for the 30s and 40s. So we have that going on. But
Are you just kind of like?
He definitely
what are you doing?
Give it a shake.
Oh, okay.
He definitely advocated advocated a vegetarian diet while battling certain health conditions, for sure. But he also was more like, he was also very adamant. One of the weird things that he said was, if you drink coffee black, it's a food, but if you put cream or sugar in your coffee, which was a weird thing to say because at the time everybody, but he would have particular combinations of foods was more his issue. Make sure you're eating this with this, but not with this. And if you eat this, then you can't eat that, but you should eat that. So he was very, he was very, yeah, it was really hard to describe. And you would have to look up a little, you'd have to like kind of do your own thinking on this one about the way he describes that. He doesn't necessarily say don't eat meat, but he definitely, when he mentioned meat, mentioned eating small portions, not large ones. Anyway, we have to get going. It's almost 7:30. It's been almost 2 hours. Oh my God, guys, it's been almost 2 hours. I don't know how I can talk. Actually, I do know how I can talk. Yeah. 2 hours. So this is the witch's hat of topics. We actually did the thing this week. So we're gonna let Chance decide what the next topic is gonna be.
Oh shoot, I'm doing the thing. I'm like trying to look up another quote and I'm like showing the search.
Oh, Erica, yeah. What do you recommend for nutrition? Erica played a large part in whatever the medical issue that the person writing him was asking about. For some people, he would say don't eat almonds, and for some, like, I'm just picking an example out of my ass here, but for some people, he would say don't eat almonds because of your medical condition. For other people, he'd say eat a pound of them a day. Like it was very, very, very specific to the individual. Okay, guys, I got the next topic. What am I doing? Oh. Okay. I got the next topic, and it is, ooh. Okay. This might be a really good one because I think this is going to really, the Oracle of Delphi.
Nice.
The Oracle of Delphi. So, Oracle of Delphi, Delphi was it a Greek or a Roman city? I would actually have to look that up. I'm a little rusty on Delphi. The Oracle of Delphi was in a temple, and I'm gonna have to look it all up, guys. So we're all gonna learn together. Great statesman. People looking for advice on whether or not to go to everything from whether should I marry that girl all the way to should I go to war with that kingdom. They would go to the Oracle. They would do a donation. A girl would be suspended, the priestess would be suspended in a chair over a chasm. She would breathe the sacred fumes.
Look at your screen.
Oh, I have a topic for Mothman.
We can maybe add it to the
Okay, yeah, we can add it to the hat. What we're doing right now is just to keep it from being too weird. We add it to the hat, and then I can pull a topic, and then once we get and then when it comes up, we can when we pull it from the hat, we can do it. So we can add it to the hat. Mothman. Anyway, okay, so the Oracle of Delphi, and what do we currently know about it? We don't know a lot. Whole bunch of stuff in history, a whole lot of really interesting shit because she was a mystic. She would foretell the future.
You don't need to. You can just.
And yeah, so we can. That
There's
was
some crossover with tarot too, because a lot of times the Oracle
crossover with tarot.
Related to.
Oh, am I taking the Lost Colony of Roanoke? So some of the theories of paranormal. I actually have the Lost Colony of Roanoke on my list, but I have it. We're basically we both got various forms of the plague this week. I'm thinking about doing shorter videos, just as regular videos on topics that don't, because Roanoke is a really, really fascinating topic. There is not a lot of information on it. So it might do better as a shorter, like 10 to 15 minute video where I just knock out a video and then we can continue the discussion in the comments. So I can do a little bit more research on it. And if there's enough video because what we've noticed is that these chats are tending to run for 2 hours, which as long as that's fitting in with what people are liking to do, I like to keep the bandwidth open for about a 2 hour chat. I don't think there's 2 hours worth of content on Roanoke because I think it's very specific and very targeted. But I think a shorter video and
or
then
a shorter chat or whatever. Either way.
Or a shorter chat, because we're also talking about possibly doing a second chat during the week that can be shorter. So it's still on it's on the to-do list, but it's not in the hat yet because we're not sure how we want to handle those kinds of topics, because that one is one of the more fascinating ones. Okay. Yeah, Jen, the middle-aged people. 2 hours is A-okay with me. You know what, people, and you guys don't owe me shit. If you guys don't want to stay for the whole thing, I'm not ever going to get hurt feelings over it. I'm having fun, and you're having fun.
Don't swear on your channel.
I'm not allowed to swear, apparently. I can swear on everybody else's channel, but not my own.
You can swear wherever you want.
Okay.
I got to complain about something.
You got a complaint? Oh, you're complaining.
Yeah.
This is your okay.
Correct.
Anyway, okay, this has been great, guys. Oracle Adelphia is next week. I'm gonna go. I know of it. I know a few fun little tidbits about it, but I'm gonna have to go do a little research. So this is gonna be fun for me. I think it's gonna. I know it's gonna be fun for you guys because there's some really, really trippy shit, and some really mystical shit and stuff like that. I'm saying shit now every other word just because you told me to not swear. She says, don't swear.
FML.
She says, I thought you didn't want to swear as much these days and blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, start the video. 2 hours later, she's going, don't swear. And so what's the first thing I do? Every other word. It's bad. Okay.
It's the rebel in you.
It's the rebel in me. Okay, well, thanks a lot, guys. This has been a lot of fun. Oracle Adelphi is next week. Any other ideas or suggestions? Send them my way. Any comments that you want to leave on this? Absolutely. I'd love to keep the conversation going. And thanks for stopping by. You guys have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.